Welcome to Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game. Hi everyone, I'm your host Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money gamer extraordinaire. Today we're talking about the 5 consumer retirement risks with nationally recognized retirement expert Curtis Cloak. Welcome to the show, Curtis.
Thank you, Steve. It's good to be here.
Well, when I think about this, I'm thinking, wow, I have 5 retirement risks that I have to think about, and we've done another show on fears. Now we're going to talk about the 5 retirement risks.
What's interesting is when somebody walks in our door and actually talks to us about retirement, they have this movie playing in their mind about what they're most afraid of. And so much of what they're afraid about isn't necessarily what is going to attack them the worst. So after we hear them out very well and understand what concerns them the most, and everyone may have something slightly different, it's important for us to then share with them the dangers that they must get out of the way first. Now, not to say these are the only ones, but these are the primary ones for the average post-retiree, pre-retiree.
Now, you got a little analogy here, so I kind of like it. Walk us through it.
Yeah, so basically we talk about when climbing a mountain, metaphorically, what's the goal? Is to get to summit. And of course, when I pack that bag and try to get to summit, when I pack that bag, I better pack it not just to get to the top, but I better pack it to get back to camp safely. Why? Because, we're accumulating money during our retirement. In fact, let me use a golfing analogy. In the front 9, I'm accumulating my wealth. In the back 9, I'm distributing my wealth. And how do I do that and still leave something at the end of the day or not outlive it and dodge all these bullets that we're going to talk about? So what we've done is we've tried to help consumers understand that what you do as an advisor to manage your money on the way up is completely different than the way you distribute on the way down. So let's talk about the first and number one risk. Number one risk in retirement is longevity risk. You see, if I live to 70, 75, I retire at 60, 65, it really doesn't matter how much my rate of return was. It really doesn't matter how much the inflation is going to hit me. Maybe it won't even matter if I get sick a year or two before I die and end up in a nursing home. The reality is, if I have a short life expectancy, I probably don't need a lot of wealth in order to get to the end game. Now, the question is, what if I'm married and it's only one spouse? Do I cannibalize the lifestyle for the surviving spouse if I don't care about that? But longevity risk, if I have to build a retirement plan that lasts to 90, 95, and you know what, we're going to have more centurions in the next 10 to 20 years than we've ever had in the world. And the reality is, that doubles and triples and quadruples, even 10 times the risk, multiplies all the risk associated with retirement, the ones I'm going to speak about here.
So human longevity is really impacting the way we do retirement modeling. So how are we don't know if we're going to live longer, we may be short on our money. This is a huge concern.
Big one. In fact, just so you know the statistics, a husband and wife 65 today have a 50% chance that one of them will live to 92.
Wow.
And a 25% chance that one of them will live to 97.
I would say the female.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll talk about health. We're talking, with Obamacare and everything, this is on the front center. We've changed our diet. We're trying to change the way we exercise. We're probably the most educated generation, the boomers coming into retirement, but health is a major concern and it's a risk.
Yeah, and you know what, with the new Patient Care Act with Obamacare, this has become a new elevated fear and concern of many consumers. And I will tell you, as a practitioner who also focuses on keeping health care costs low in retirement, in fact, it can be the Achilles heel of retirement planning if we don't figure this out. So I have a devoted expert in our office. That's all she does is manage the cost on these things, and we try to project the right medical inflation in our investment calculations and so on.
Do you throw in long-term care on that too?
Absolutely.
When you're thinking? So it's not only medical costs, it's extended care costs.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, the answer to mitigating healthcare risks probably is the right kind of insurance. What do I mean by that? Well, it's the right Medicare supplement plan and the right Medicare Part D plan, and maybe it's the Advantage plan that's more appropriate for you. It's what dials in your region, what networks are available, and what keeps my costs low, and what passes as much of that risk on the insurance manufacturer. And if I do have longevity in my family history, and longevity with people that end up in the nursing home before they pass away or an assisted living facility, I may want to consider long-term care. Now, that all matters on how well I do the distribution plan, in that, am I going to hold a bunch of money hostage to low returns to income, or am I going to free the hostages? Am I going to find a way to do more with less so that I unfetter and free up a lot more of the portfolio so that I can afford to take other issues off the table, such as long-term care and concerns and buying the right kind of insurance. So the answer to really mitigating health care, though I'm still going to have some expenses, is to have the right kind of insurance in place and know how to build that as far as a medical inflation expectation into the retirement calculations.
And you're combining Medicare, long-term care. You're taking the whole equation. And a lot of our listeners, our consumers that are watching today, they also have HSA accounts. They have FSA that maybe is left over after they retired. There are a lot of people that have these kind of accounts that they can utilize to mitigate this issue. But these are just a few of those things that we're talking about. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk about the other three: inflation, sequence of returns, and market volatility. Well, we all know about that. We'll be right back after the break.
Take a close look at your hard-earned dollar. How do you think your money's doing? Are you keeping an eye on it? Is it protected from taxes, inflation, and market risk? Over time, those Washingtons could become Franklins. With tax-advantaged indexed universal life from one of the largest distributors of indexed universal life, Ash Brokerage.
Well, we're back again with Curtis Cloak, retirement expert extraordinaire. Curtis, when we look at inflation, a lot of people, boy, just for a couple of years back, we were saying we were living in deflation. But I think people are very concerned about their money keeping pace with the real cost of living. I think whatever the government's putting out doesn't understand my grocery bill. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't seem to be, my gas bill's high, my gasoline bill. It doesn't seem to reflect it. So I need to live in the real world. How can I play in the inflation game?
Well, understand inflation is a fact of life. If you go back any history in the United States, you're going to see that average inflation has been somewhere in that 3% range. And yeah, some of the years it's deflation or it's very, very low. In other years it's very, very high. And oftentimes people talk about hyperinflation. And I will tell you that if you look over the last 100 years, the last 50 years, and you look at hyperinflation, somewhere between 18 years to 4 years is about how long we call hyperinflation really does last. And we saw some, 12, 18% rates of return, back in the late 70s, early 80s. And it just didn't last very long. Unfortunately, there were some banks that offered some 10-year CD rates on that and then went belly up. I suppose we probably as an industry have learned our lesson from those past mistakes. So we probably won't see that the next time around. But inflation as a whole is realized that 3% under the, if you take any number divided into 72, we call it the rule 72, you'll see it takes 24 years. So if I retire and I've got 30, 35, 40 years in retirement after I retire, at 3% inflation, every 24 years I'm going to have to double progressionally as I progress toward that 24th year, my income to maintain my same standard of living. And so inflation is a fact that I have to contend with. And we try to build inflation into our strategy and consider it very, very, very well. We also consider two kinds of inflation. Inflation for all the standard issues and then medical inflation for medical issues. And understand that CPI and Social Security isn't going to keep pace with this. Here's why. Number one, CPI does not take into account, CPIU, it does not take into account food and gas and other items, which we're currently seeing a market increase in at this time. And guess what? They change the rules from year to year to whatever suits them to keep the cost low based on what the entitlements are and whatever the government feels they can't afford to not be in a bigger deficit than they already are. And so the rules keep changing. And the reality, there's this standard, this cost of living that inflation is going to contend with. But we have to address it.
When you look about sequence of returns, are you talking about the chronology of something, or what are you talking about?
Well, understand that when I'm accumulating money, and sequence of returns is not something that I have to worry about. And if I were to spend as much time as I should to talk about sequence of returns, we'd be here a little bit longer than what we have time for the show. So understand that when I'm investing money, and now instead of putting money in every month or every pay period, we call that dollar cost averaging. I actually lower my average cost of buying any particular investment over a long period of time when I dollar cost average a certain amount in. And understand that when I retire, instead of dollar cost averaging it in, I reverse the dollar cost averaging process. I'm now distributing every month a sum of money. So I just want you to imagine that if I'm buying in $1,000 at $10 a share, I'm buying 100 shares. In next month, let's say I have, a plane go through two buildings in New York and suddenly the market drops in half, again, just making it up and exaggerating the illustration to make a point. And I still have the same investment, but now it's $5 a share instead of $10 a share, but I still need the $100. or I still need the $1,000. Remember that I'm only got $5 shares now, and I'm going to have to take twice as many shares out in order to get the same $1,000 I got last month when the share price is less. So understand that when the market recovers back to $10, there's no possible way for me to recover because I have to dewind. I have to live on income. One of the things I do to protect that is obviously look for income, interest, things that pay interest, things that pay dividends. But those yields today are very, very low. And so when I need a higher distribution rate than what I can get in yields and interest, that's the challenge, a sequence of returns.
So when most people hearing you explain this, they're sitting there saying, well, that sounds like it's kind of like has volatility to it. You were talking about, hey, it's $10 a share, now it's $5 a share, but I still need my level income.
Well, understand that market volatility, though it sounds the same, is quite different than sequence of returns, because if you Monte Carlo simulates a
Now, what's Monte Carlo?
Monte Carlo is where you take a back test of literally hundreds, thousands, maybe even millions of reiterations of a blend of investment performance and back test it. And just understand, there's probably no Monte Carlo simulation that back tests all the reiterations that would be legally, really possible. But the point is, when you back test it, what you find is that when you have a different scenarios being back tested, that even not distributing money, if you have the wrong sequence of returns, or really high returns and then big losses, it's possible that you could lose portfolio value without even taking distribution. So one of the things that we recommend is figuring out how to calculate and engineer a specified portion of your portfolio so that you can move them to what we call static returns that still match historical performance in the market over your retirement horizon, that build inflation into the distribution, that eliminate or lower the fee drag and mitigate taxes. When I can do that, I can actually protect myself against market volatility and at the same time sequence of returns.
So these risks are human longevity, our health costs, our inflation, sequence of returns, and especially market volatility. These all composite to make the risks that we need to cover off if you're going to have a really golden year during your retirement. Well, that's our show for today. I want to thank Curtis Cloak for being my special guest and today's Money Mentor. And before going forward with any of the ideas you hear on our show, always consult your tax advisor or legal counsel. And as the good Reverend John Wesley always said, make all you can, save all you can, give all you can. I'm Steve Savant. We'll see you next week.